Line in Space 2021. So the goal is to create a three-dimensional composition with a line in space that creates visual movement, uses rhythm and repetition to imply a surface, and is asymmetrically balanced. So those are our three design principles that we're trying to accomplish within this project. So within Rhino, you're going to start a new composition, a new design. I'm going to go ahead and show you the first portion of this. Let's go ahead and zoom back. For zooming within Rhino, if I drag from the right to the left and let go, everything that's touching my box will be selected. And then I can use the magnifying glass to zoom selected. And I'm in a drawing mode now, drawing view, so I can see the compositions. Now, these three compositions are all the same. The only difference is I have balanced them differently on a different point. So I've taken the same composition, put it on one point, on the other point, and finally on the third. And you can see that while there is a relationship between them, it does impact how you view them. Okay, and these do not have a surface implied on them yet. Okay, so how is it that I created these? We're going to create multiple compositions with line in space. We'll do it with a 3-point arc, which is the one right there. That's a 3-point arc. So if I click on that, you can see I have 3 points within that arc. And then we can do it with a 4-point arc. So if I click on this and turn on my control points, you can see that this curve has 4 control points. The difference between 3-point and 4-point is with 4-point, I can have a sort of a boomerang shape where I have a gentle curve, a tighter curve, and a gentle curve again. If you use 5, 6, 7, 8 points, it's very difficult to get a consistent line. And so that's why I'm encouraging the students to use either 3-point lines or 4-point lines. And then the final, these arcs are all parts of a true arc, part of a circle. And so those are created with a start, end, and a point on arc. And so each student will make an 8-inch by 10-inch piece of paper, and they will draw 3 arcs on it, and then they'll join them together into a triangle. And they'll do a composition with 3-point, a composition with 4-point, and a composition with a true arc. And then they will rotate those up into 3-dimensional space and pipe them to create their designs. Now, I did 3 different orientations on here. I'm not requiring the students to do that, but it's fine if they do in their exploration. They have a minimum they need to do, and that is that they need to do a composition for each of these. And then I like to see them do variations. Try rotating some of the arcs at different angles and so forth. So let's go ahead and I'm going to close that out, and we'll just follow along step by step with how you create your line in space. And so we'll say I want to create a new model. I'm using the Mac version. The Mac version and the PC version are slightly different. And some of you will be working with Rhino 4 in the PC. Some of you will be working with Rhino 5 or 6, on the Mac, and some of you will be working with Rhino 7 on the PC. So while the commands can be typed into the command lines and they're all identical, where the icons are changes just slightly. So if you can't find it, you can always type it into the command line. So the first thing we need to do is we need to set the units. And that tells Rhino what unit we're drawing in. Because we're in America, we're going to use inches. And so I need to type in units. And that will bring up the submenu for units. And you can see that the default is millimeters. So I just click on the up and down bar next to millimeters, change that to inches. And then it asks me if I want to scale the model, and you should say yes. And you can see at this point that it's set my tolerance. It's left my dimension in decimal. I could do fractional if I want to do, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it in decimal. And then I just click on the red dot to close that out. Now I'm drawing in inches and I've finished the first step. Second step is to draw a 8-inch by 10-inch rectangle in the top view. We have 4 different views to view as the default. You've got top, front, right side, and perspective. You can set each of these views to whatever you want if you want to change the views, but the main one you're going to want to remember is to change. And let's say you want to zoom in and see just the top view. I can double click on the word top and it will make the top view fill the whole frame. I can then double click again and I get back to the 4 views. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and double click and make the top view the whole thing. And then the next thing that I want to do is draw that rectangle. So for a rectangle, I can go to the icon for a rectangle, which is kind of the second row down in the middle, or I can type in rectangle into the command line. And now the command line is always up at the upper left corner. For the PC, it's like above these other terms, and the grid snaps down at the bottom. On the Mac, it's right here. So now if I want to draw exactly 8 inches by 10 inches, I'll use the grid command. So I'll click on grid snap, and that will make my cursor jump every inch or whatever I have my grid set at. And the default will be to go every inch. So I'll bring it over 8 inches and up 10 inches and then click again. And that's how I'll create my rectangle. You also will, you'll notice in the lower right corner, I can see the X, Y, and Z location of my cursor. And so that's the other way that you can do it, that you would draw an 8-inch by 10-inch. You can also do 8,10 to make your rectangle. So you've got a number of ways that you can draw the rectangle. And then we'll double click back here. So we've got that step done. Now within that, I want to draw three control point curves within the rectangle. The reason we're doing the 8-inch by 10-inch is so it'll print on an 8.5 by 11, and we'll have all of our lines so that we can physically make the wires. And so let's go ahead and create the family. Now, as I'm creating arcs, let's go ahead and double click on this. To zoom in, it's just the wheel. Wherever your cursor is pointed is where you will zoom away from or towards. If you right click, you can get the pan and move the page around. All right, so now we're ready to draw our 3 control point curves. Now I'm still using snap. I'm going to turn grid snap off so I have a little more precise control of what kind of arc I'm drawing. Now, if I draw an arc straight up and then straight over, and I have basically the distance between those 3 points fairly even, it will be very similar to a part of a circle. If I draw 2 points close together, I will accelerate. So I'll have a gradual curve and then turn more sharply at the end. Okay, so if I wanted sort of like a French curve, I would have these fairly close together at the top. Now, it wants to keep drawing. It wants me to keep drawing a 4th point, but I want to stop at 3. So it is right click. Once I've hit my 3rd point, right click will stop that arc, because it'll just keep drawing. If I can just keep adding points. It will not stop adding points until I hit with right click, or I can hit return as well. All you need to do is highlight something and hit delete, and it'll go away. So I've got the first arc. Now I'm going to try to make a family of arcs. I want them to be similar, but not identical. So I'm going to create a new arc, and I'm going to make a larger arc this time. And I think I'm going to make this larger arc more gentle, not as accelerated as the first arc. So this arc I just created does not bend at the end as much. It's more gentle, but it's still bending more at the upper portion than it is at the lower portion. Again, you can choose any kind of arc that you would like, but you do want these to be a family. And then I'm going to create my last control point curve, and I'm going to make a small one this time, and I'm going to make it bending a little tighter than I did the first one. Now I look at these arcs and I decide, how do I feel about them? To move them, I can just click on them, hold down, and move. So moving an object is pretty easy. You just put your cursor on top of it, click and move. All right, so now I've got these 3 arcs. Feeling pretty good about them. If I want to edit them, I can highlight them. Again, click and drag from right to left. Everything touching my box will be selected. And so I can turn on my control points, which is the points edit, points on. And I can see how these lines are created. And I'm thinking I might want to change this one a little bit. I think I'm going to actually, move it just a little bit. Now I could try to get relationship where they're all sort of angled exactly the same, but then I'll have a little bit boring because they're all going to end up exactly the same. So I'm going to have a little variation here within my curves. Okay. I'm happy with that. Then to get my points on turned off, it is right click on the points on to points off. If you leave those points on, you can no longer select the curve, and that can be very frustrating. Okay, so now I've got my 3 curves in a family. I'm pretty happy with the shape of them. The one thing we should avoid is an OG curve or an S-shaped curve. We don't want you to do that for this composition. And then finally, we want to go to make these into a triangle. So I'm going to move and rotate the curves to make a triangle. So to do that, I'm going to use OSNAP. The OSNAP is either on the Mac on the left-hand side down here or on the bottom on the PC. And I want to select endpoint. And then I'll use the move command. I can type it into the command line, or I can click on move, select the object, hit return or right click, and then select endpoint. And you can see how it snaps to one of the other endpoints. So I'll snap it to that endpoint. Now I'm going to rotate, and I want to rotate these so that the distance between this and this are about the length of my 3rd curve. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate, select the curve, hit return, select the endpoint, select the other endpoint, and then I've got that rotating. Now I want to move this last curve, so I'll click on it, move, endpoint, endpoint, and then I'm going to rotate it now so that it's pointing right from that point to this point. And so to do that, it's rotate, click on the endpoint, click on the endpoint, and align with the other endpoint. Now I can see my curve is a little bit short. So I've got a couple ways I can fix this. If I have those perfectly in line, I can just scale it. So I can hit scale, click on the end, click on the end, and move it out. So now I've got a triangle. However, as I look at this composition, I'm feeling like this is a little too tight right down here. So one thing that I can do is, now that I've got all three of these selected, I can highlight the whole piece. Oops. There we go. And I can turn on my control points. And for example, I can move by dragging from right to left. I can say, you know what? I want that to go a little bit more like that. I can then move these lines around to get the triangle that I'm feeling good about. So you can edit your points after you've put them together into the triangle. The important thing is, once you've decided what your triangle is, you don't want to then edit it as it gets into 3 dimensions, because then your pattern will not match what you're working with. So once I'm happy with my composition, I'll turn off my point editing and I'm ready to go to the next step. So let's look at what the next step is. So we have moved and rotated. We use OSNAP to move the 2 curves and have the same endpoint. And then we have used 2D rotate to get them to form into the triangle. And I've done editing to get them to be the shape of triangle that I would like. One thing that's important is you don't want to have, you want enough curvature in your triangle that it gets interesting 3D. If you have too flat of curves, when you get it into 3D, you won't be able to have much visual motion. Okay, so now I'm ready to, I want to copy and paste the triangle and move it to a new location outside of the rectangle. So to do that, I zoom back a little bit here. I drag. Okay, if I drag over the rectangle, I'll get the rectangle. If I didn't cross this line, I won't get it. So I want to drag to get all 3 of those, but not to get the rectangle. And then it's Control C, or you can type in copy, and Control V, which is to paste. And then I just drag, click on it, and drag and drop it off. If I accidentally clicked somewhere else and it was no longer yellow, I would have to go in and individually pick each of those curves so that I can move it. So it's easy to move it while it's selected after you copied and pasted it. All right, so we've got that ready to go. Now let's go to the next thing, which is step 5. Using the pipe command, I want to pipe the copied curves with a radius of 0.03. So to do that, I'll select all of those curves, and then for pipe, it is under solid and pipe is there. So I can get it from the pull down menu. I can also just type it into the command line, PIPE. And I've already had my radius set at 0.03. If yours happens to come up with diameter, pipe diameter, just click on the word radius, it'll make it the radius. And then type in the dimension. I think the default is 1, so it would come up with a 1-inch radius, which would make a very, very large pipe. So we want to go 0.030, which is 30 thousandths of an inch, and then hit return. And so now if I go ahead and go to my perspective view, now in perspective view, if I right click, it will pan my world around. If I hold the, let's see. If I want to zoom in, again, the wheel will let you zoom in. And then if I want to view this, right now it's in wireframe mode. If I want to view it in a different mode, I can right click on the perspective word and I can choose shaded or rendering. So shaded, I can see my object like that. One I like to use for this one is the pen tool. And this will make it like a line drawing. So I can see what those three wires look like as I would bend them. As you're creating your composition, you will actually do this with your wire. You'll print this out. You will bend your arcs to match the curve, cut them off to the length, and then you'll start with this, and then we're going to bring them into the third dimension. So to do that, let's go to the next step. We're, I believe, on 6. In the front and side views, use 2D rotate to rotate the triangle to balance on one of the ends. So to do that, I'll just go here and select the pipes and say, for example, rotate, and then I can pick one of the ends and rotate it up in the vertical direction. And now I can rotate it in the front view to get it to balance, because right now it looks like it's kind of falling over. Okay, now that's rotating it up on the narrow point. You can rotate it off any of these 3 points if you'd like. But let's go ahead and start with that. Now, I'm going to do 3D rotate. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. And we're going to do 3D rotate. Let's see, we're on step 6, first subpoint. Using 3D rotate, select the ends of the curves with OSNAP and then rotate to create the desired visual movement. You're going to need to change viewpoints and move it around to see if you're getting that visual movement or not. So I will use 3D rotate. To get to 3D rotate, it is right click on the rotate command, or you can type in rotate 3D. I don't want to rotate all of them, so I'm going to escape out of that. If you get into a command you don't want to be in, instead I need to select one arc that I want to rotate 3-dimensionally. So now 3D rotate. And I can rotate this around. Because I selected the 2 endpoints, it will rotate based on those endpoints. All right, now I'm going to rotate one of the other curves. Again, 3D rotate. And one of the things you'll notice here, if I just select, I've got a bunch of polysurfaces there. I must have accidentally copied it a whole bunch of times. Now we'll do 3D rotate for that last one. Endpoint, endpoint. I'm going to take a look in my perspective view and see what I think of. As I rotate this around, I'm kind of seeing a dancer kind of arcing backwards as I look at this. I feel like the top curve is kind of going upwards a little too far. So again, I can click on it here in the perspective view and use 3D rotate. Click on my end views, and I want to move that down just a little bit. Okay, so that's working pretty good for me. Feel pretty confident about the composition, but one thing is I'm kind of missing a plane or reference. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a box underneath this so I can understand my perspective a little bit better. To do that, it's the next step, which is to create a box that is 6 inches by 6 inches by 2 inches under my design. And I'll use my grid snap again to make sure I'm 6 inches by 6 inches. And then in the side view, I can click down. You can type in box, or you can click on the little icon for a box. Use Shift and you can select multiple pieces. And then I zoom selected to make that the center of my world. And I can see what it looks like. I don't like where it's located on the box, kind of off on one side. There are times where you want your composition not to be in the dead center. And because of the visual movement you create, you might want to have it off on one side, sort of visually moving towards the center. But I'm not quite feeling that's the appropriate place. So I'll move my composition to a different location till I'm happy with its location and its balance. Okay, so I've completed my first composition. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with a 4-point arc. And then I'll do the same thing with part of a circle, that circular arc. Okay, and then we'll do a soft critique and pick which of our compositions is best. Now, it's fine if, like, I'm not sure that this is the composition I like. It is totally fine to copy and paste it. So I can just select my whole box, hit copy, paste, and add another one. And then I can go in and rotate it differently. So that, for example, I can go in now and say, what if I did my 3D rotate a little different? So I select endpoint, endpoint, and I'm going to go ahead and move it that direction. And now I take a look at it. Now I'm getting more of a flame type feel to it. Got a little more twist in my composition. But I'm not particularly happy with this tightness that I have up top here. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate that more upward. So I'll do 3D rotate. Oops, escape. Try again. Okay, now I accidentally moved this one at the same time. I had selected two without realizing. We can always move something back by using our OSNAP and do the move command. This one is supposed to be at the end point there to bring it back into my first composition. I'm looking at this composition and I'm not feeling good about this one. But that's okay. You know, you shouldn't necessarily feel perfect about every one of your compositions. And your TA will be really, really happy if you come up with a bunch of compositions, whether they're good or bad. Don't worry about it too much. As a class, we'll critique it and select the best ones for you. So you should have at least 3 compositions, one with 3-point arcs, one with 4-point arcs, and one with parts of circular arcs. The other challenge that you're going to have is it's fine to go ahead and do multiple designs. I'm also looking at my balance, and it looks like my balance has fallen off a little bit. As I look at this, I'm not happy with the way that this is balanced. So I'm going to rotate that in my front view or side view to get my balance back to where I'm happy with it. Okay, so let's show you quickly the 4-point arc and the 3-point arc. So I can just copy my 8x10, copy, move this down. And now to draw a 4-point arc, I'm just doing 4 clicks and then hitting return. And I can edit the 4-point arc to whatever composition that I like. All right. And then finally, if I want to copy and paste that again, and I want to do circular arcs, we're going to do that with the this command right here. It's arc, center, start an angle, but I'm going to click on it and hold, and I have arc, start, end, and point on arc. This is one of the easiest ones to control. I select my start to my arc, the end to my arc, turn my grid snap off, and then a point on the arc, and so I can choose what size circle where the center point of that would be. And then I'll do another one of those, start, end, and point on arc. And a third one. If you don't like one, you can just delete it and repeat again till you're happy with your arc. All right. Does it sound like fun? Hope you are going to enjoy this. Is it overwhelming? Is it too much?
All right. It's fine. I think it's fine.
Okay, so it's not too difficult. Once we get to this point, the student will have 3 to 6 or 10 different designs. You'll do a soft critique as a class and select where they go. And then the next phase is to go in and do 3 variations of implied surface. I'm going to show you one implied surface quickly so you understand how that is done. So I've got my composition. Let's say I decide that I look at these and I decide this is the one that I want to keep. So one thing that they can do is draw a box around everything they don't want, get it all highlighted, and they can click on the light bulb and that'll make it go away or hide. I've got to turn my edit points off. Let's hide that one as well. And then to bring them back, it's just right click on the light bulb and they all come back. So they can hide all of those, and then they can easily create their surface here without accidentally moving other pieces around by clicking on them when they didn't intend to. So to make my implied surface, I will use the near command and endpoint. If I think about this composition, what kind of surface do I want to imply on there? And I can see this, it's kind of a twisty surface because I've got this one going back and this one coming forward. But I'm sort of getting between these two, the feeling that they're both going back. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my surface arcing back in that direction. So to do this, I'll make sure planar is turned on. I'll click near at the point I want my arc to start. And then I can either do it in perspective here. It's a little bit dangerous because sometimes it ends up way, way far away, but I can kind of look at the other views and I can see, I think it'll be all right. And then near again. Now I can take a look at this. And I can see it in the other views. And I can control this one probably best in this top view. Turn on my control points. And then I can say, you know, I want that to be a very regular arc and kind of a soft curve. So that's my first point. And I would recommend that students do primarily 3-point arcs. If they want to try being a little more adventuresome, they can do 4-point arcs. The danger is you can end up with a non-planar arc. With 3-point, no matter what you do, it will be a planar arc, and they'll be able to print it out and bend the wire. With 4-point, it's possible to have 4 points that are not in the same plane. 3 points will always be in the same plane. And so that's why I recommend that students do it with 3-point. And then I'm going to put another one here. And they're doing from 2 to 6 arcs. And then finally, I'll do one up top here. And now I can take a look at those from the top view, and I can see that some of them aren't quite working together. Some are bulging out too far. For example, as I look at these, this one's bulging out a lot further than others. So I'm going to go ahead and have this one. I don't want it to bulge out quite so far. So I will turn on my control points and move it back. And as I look at this, I'm getting the feeling of, oops, and I can see my top one I do not like. The way it is bending, it's bending the wrong direction. So I'm going to turn on the control point. I may need to turn near off so I don't accidentally end up grabbing the box down on the bottom. And let's take a look at that. So now I'm getting this, let's go ahead and getting an implied surface. And I want to get the feeling. I did a very regular spacing. Students can do a regular spacing. They can do an accelerated spacing where the arcs get closer together. So they start far apart and get closer and closer together. They also, for example, in this one, all of the arcs are sort of extending at the same angle. Let's go ahead and bring this to the center of our viewpoint. So I use the magnifying glass. And I can see all of them are sort of stretching back in this same orientation. I can turn on all of these control points. And you can see that all extending sort of the same. I can choose to make this sort of radiating, so it's kind of like arcs within space. So for example, I might pull this one down a little bit, this one down a little less, leave that one where it's at, have this one start arcing up, and this one, whoops, controls escape. And this one up even further, and that one I want to get that control point. I'm accidentally getting something I don't want. So let's go ahead and look here. I pulled those into 3D space too far. I didn't want to go that far. So I want to pull them back. But I'm getting this sort of rhythm repetition. This one angled down, that one angled less, flat, angled out, and then this one I want to angle up just a little bit more. And now I'm getting the idea of that surface sort of curving created by that rhythm repetition. Once I'm happy with this composition, I'll go ahead and turn off my edit points. And I can select each of those arcs and pipe them. So solid, pipe, and 0.3, the same diameter. And now I can see them with a pipe. However, I'm not totally happy with the way those two are working. And so I may want to delete that one. And for example, I might want to move this, turn on my edit points and use near again. And I'm going to go ahead and move this one down to that corner there. Click on the curve point there and move this one down. And I'm going to move this one down a little bit. And then I can, again, I want to delete these. I'm going to move these down. I didn't like the implication I was getting with that different surface there. In fact, I may want to move this curve point up here and move this one down like there. Oops, I missed it. Just let's get that near there. And then I can turn off my near point so I don't grab what I don't want. That was one surface that I created. I'm going to create a new surface. Probably, you know what I should do? I'm going to undo that. Go back. I'm just doing undo, Command Z, to get back to where I was initially. And I'm going to copy and paste this thing and make a different composition because I need to create 3 of these. Copy, paste. And then I'm going to change and do the surface differently in this second one. So I'll zoom selected. So this is the new one. I'm going to delete these pipes. And then I can do it in a different way. So I can just probably start fresh. And what I want to do is follow this top curve. Okay, so that got near selected. I'm going to go here, there, and there. And then I'm going to turn on my control points. And I want that curve to sort of mimic the top line. So I think the surface might be more interesting if it mimicked that top line, but I want to go a little bit more like there. Okay, and then I'm going to do a second curve here, there, and there. And again, turn on my points to edit that. And each of these curves I'm making relational. This top curve was an accelerating curve. It started gradual and got sharper. So I'm making each of these curves down below similar to it so that there's a family relationship in that surface. And I might have it accelerate less and less as it gets to the bottom. And let's go with one more curve. There, there, and there. And I'm looking at my acceleration here. My acceleration isn't consistent, but I kind of want the largest X height or Z height here, and then a smaller, smaller, and smallest. So I want to get that rhythm going there. So I'm going to move this, turn my control points on, and move that one up just a little. Turn on my control points, and I'm going to move that one up. And now this one's not quite the right shape for me. And now I'm getting a different implied surface. Let's go ahead and pipe those. Right click to turn off my point editing, and I'll pipe these. Solid pipe. And now I've got two of the three that I need to do for implied surface. I've got one surface where they're sort of horizontal, and this one, and they're evenly spaced. And this one, I'm doing an acceleration spacing, and they're sort of following that top curve. Again, you can do surfaces that you imply in multiple ways till you're happy with your composition. Questions? Okay, I think we're ready to go. That's basically, oh, last thing, don't want to forget, how do I get these curves down to my page so that I can print them? So what I need to do is unhide. Let's say I decide this is the composition I want to do, and I'm going to change to wireframe for my view. And I want the wire, the curve that is within there. Let me hide that. I'm going to hide these so that the wire is just available. And I want each of these curves to be copied and pasted. So I'll copy, paste, and then I'm going to move it onto my original box, which I somehow moved. Copy and paste. If you accidentally delete your box, you can just bring it back. Okay, so I've got that was the bottom curve that I had. So I want the middle curve now. Copy, paste. Copy and paste. And I'm going to move that over there. And then the top curve. Copy, paste. So I've got now the three curves that I want to reproduce. However, as I look at them in 3D space, you can see they're floating up in the air. I need to bring them down to the surface. So what I would recommend that you do is move and use endpoint to move them. So I'll take this bottom curve. Oops. Try again. You have to move the selected one. Endpoint down there. And then I can see if I look at them in the other views that they're not laying flat on the page. So I'm going to rotate this to get flat. On the ground. And then I'm going to rotate it one more time with 2D rotate. Now you can see it's still not laying flat. So now I need to turn on my nearest command, and I'm going to do 3D rotate. So I'll right click on rotate. I need to pick the endpoint, the other endpoint, a point that's along the arc somewhere near, and then hold Shift to get it to lay flat. So now I have rotated that three-dimensionally to be flat on my paper without changing the shape of it. And I do the same with all of those arcs. Did it make sense? I think I've lost you. Let's do it one more time to be sure. Okay, so I want to move this one down onto the paper. So I will move endpoint, and I'm going to select the end of this. So I've moved it onto the end of one of the arcs that's on the paper. 2D rotate, endpoint, endpoint, and endpoint. Now I'm going to do 3D rotate, endpoint, endpoint, a point nearest, and then hold it Shift to make it horizontal. Okay. Now, right now that arc is sort of crossing there. I can rotate it again so that I don't get confusion there. All right. Now, one thing that the student does need to sort of keep track of is which of these arcs is which within here, and where it is at along that arc. So for example, the one that we're doing right now, this arc up here is this arc I've copied here. So they may want to, just to keep track of it, they may want to actually move it to its location. So instead of going to the corner, they may want to go endpoint and say, this is the one that goes up top here. And then rotate around endpoint, endpoint to like there. And then rotate it flat. So. And then 3D rotate to get the twist out of it. And that will tell them, oh, that's the top curve. Okay. And it's following this curve here. And then this one is the next curve. So I can move that one to like there and rotate it because I know it goes like there. And this one, move to there and then rotate it. That way they keep track of where they go. So after they bend their wires, they'll be able to reassemble their implied surface.